I have a message that I would like to share with whoever is willing to listen. There is a difference between someone who is the authority and someone who is as the authority. And a good example can be found in the Bible, in the story of Joseph, where he is given a ring and he's to be as Pharaoh. And anywhere he went where Pharaoh wasn't, he was as Pharaoh. And that didn't make him Pharaoh. And in like manner, God is able to give authority to another being to represent him in his, I don't want to say absence because that's not entirely accurate. There's two parts to God. There is his consciousness located in as a single individual. And then there is the substance that comes from him. And the substance that comes from God is everywhere, even though his consciousness is singular and only in one place. We come from God, and we can find God within ourselves through that substance that came from God. So our spirits came from God, our bodies come from God, etc. But when God anointed the two great lights, they were anointed to preside over this world within the firmament. As such, it isn't the lights themselves, it isn't the sun, and it isn't the moon that is that authority. And the sun and the moon isn't those two beings. The sun and the moon represent those two beings who were given authority by God to preside over this world. But the other component to that is they weren't simply selected by God, but they were selected by the Elohim who came to this world. And so it's not a true democracy because they were assigned by God, but they were also chosen by the Elohim, the people. And so there's this balance between the authority that comes from God and the authority that comes from those being. Okay, so there's a difference between the authority of the king and the authority given to the king by those being governed. And so when you govern righteously, the people support and sustain you. And without that support and without being sustained by those people, even though you might be the rightful king, you are not going to be successful. You're not going to have the backing of the combined might of the people. So, the sun and the moon represent two kings who will live during the Messianic period and who will preside within the firmament over this world. Heaven will be brought back down to the earth. The Garden of Eden was at one point in time removed and taken to another location so that mankind could not interact with the garden. There will be, during the Messianic era, a place where the Son's glory will be present. And before anybody goes crazy, even if Jesus was the Messiah, even if he came and did some of the things, or even all of the things that are suggested he did, that at most makes him the lesser light, not the greater light. Because Jesus said he was subject to the Father. Now there's the Christian group, the Trinitarians, who say, well, that just means that, they're equal, even though they are different. But you can't be the Father without having a Son, and you can't be the Son without having a Father, etc., etc., etc. And it all goes back to some debates over created versus uncreated. And the sad truth is, I don't know if that's sad truth, but the truth of the matter is that there's only one who wasn't created. There's only one who is the beginning of creation. And he's not even on this earth and never will be. If he were to come inside the firmament, you would have a very quick destruction of everything here. No corruption can exist in God's presence. It doesn't happen. It can't happen. Not because, nobody wants it to happen, but it's physically impossible to be next to God without being affected by God's presence. So God is outside the firmament and cannot actually enter the firmament without destroying everything here. So God has two representatives within the firmament to preside in God's place. And one is subject to the other. The sun presides over the moon and the stars. But the problem you have with the sun is that in the sun's glory, you can't see the darkness except for in the shadows. And so this world wasn't created for the light. The light has all kinds of heavens. Anything you can even imagine or want to live in, you can be there. There's heavens like crazy. The light already had a home. The light already had a place to create and grow. But the darkness did not. And so God chose the location where the darkness was, in the water, and the Elohim were given authority to build the firmament around that location, and then to build a new world inside the firmament where the darkness would be able to take on physical form and learn and grow and develop. Now, I don't want anybody to think that I believe religion doesn't have a place. Religion has a place. It was created by the Elohim in order to establish communication between them and the darkness. And so there have been religions of every kind and size that have been created over the history of this world in order to establish communication between the light and the darkness. There have been the experiments, the strategies, everything that can be imagined has been tried in order for this world to be what it was meant to be. Now, one of the things that Heavenly Father wants me to discuss is how every person has the right to reconnect to God. Doesn't matter how evil, doesn't matter how good, doesn't matter where you are at. God will meet you where you are. And the role of these two great lights is not to replace God. And that is the reason why the Lord Elohim commanded the children of Israel, actually commanded Moses, not to have idols, to refrain from idolatry. So don't make an image after the manner of the sun or the moon or of the stars or of anything and pray to it. Don't create something to replace God's authority. Now, there's idolatry, idolize. You can learn about idolatry by understanding what it means to idolize someone or something. And I realize that there are religious individuals who would say that there is a very distinct difference between idolizing someone and creating an idol that you pray to and you bow down to. When you idolize someone, there's an expression that you worship the ground they walk on, right? It means you just want to be like them, and that leads to idolatry. That is the gateway to idolatry. But the real problem that exists in this world stems from saying that anything besides God is God's authority. So as I said earlier, the sun and the moon, while ordained, while anointed by God to represent his interests here, to represent that authority here on earth, are not themselves that authority. Heavenly Father is not God and is not that authority that God bestowed upon him. If you look at Orthodox Judaism versus the other forms of Judaism, secular, Orthodox Judaism versus secular Judaism, one of the primary differences between the two is that secular Judaism claims that the Torah has a purpose and has what's the word I'm looking for?